The old veteran lay crumpled on the sun-baked concrete, his body bowed in pain, trembling hands shielding a lifetime of scars. Around him, 5 leather-clad bikers erupted in cruel laughter, their voices echoing like hollow thunder in that deserted gas station lot. No one intervened. The attendant peeked through the window, then looked away.
Shoppers hurried past, heads down, clutching plastic bags and coffee cups, as though his fall were as inconsequential as a discarded soda can. They did not know that within the hour everything would change, and that those mocking brutes would
come to rue their thoughtless cruelty. Type respect if you believe those who sacrificed deserve to be honored. Samuel, Sam. Whitmore eased his faded 1970 Ford F-100 alongside the fuel pump. The mid-July sun shimmered off the cracked asphalt in waves of heat. At 80 years old, Sam moved slowly, not from fear, but from wounds earned decades earlier in jungles whose names most Americans could barely pronounce. His cap, once a deep navy, had faded to pale gray, the words Vietnam veteran barely legible. He ran a calloused hand across the truck's rust-speckled fender as though greeting an old comrade, and killed the engine. The truck had seen better days, just like its owner. Blue paint had peeled to prime the rust beneath, and dents told silent tales of gravel drives and narrow escapes. Yet the engine, a worn but stubborn V8, still roared to life when turned, just as Sam's resolve still burned bright. He unhooked the veteran's discount card from his shirt pocket and limped toward the convenience store. Near the air pump, 5 bikers lounged against their gleaming machines, tattoos rippling like coiled serpents beneath their cut-off leather vests. They eyed Sam with restless anticipation, seeking sport in his quiet dignity. Check out Grandpa's. "Rust bucket?" one sneered, voice thick with contempt. "Bet it was in some museum before he stole it." Sam ignored them. He'd learned long ago that certain battles weren't worth fighting. In silence, he paid for gas and a bottle of water, moving as though invisible. Invisibility had its advantages. No one asked questions when your memories were as loud as his. Returning to his truck, Sam slid the nozzle into the filler neck. His hands, once steady enough to disarm landmines, trembled slightly, each movement deliberate. He didn't notice the biker approaching until cheap cologne and cigarette smoke prickled his senses. That thing even pass inspection? "The man demanded, tracing a tattooed finger along the truck's dent. Sam looked up, meeting the young thug's gaze with eyes once sharp enough to sight through rifle scopes. "Still runs," he replied simply. The biker's grin snapped into anger. "Hey, I'm talking to you, old man," he barked. "This ain't a retirement home parking lot." The others drifted in, forming a semicircle around Sam. The attendant glanced again, studied Sam's trembling frame, then looked away. Sam remained calm. "Just getting gas," he said. "No trouble." "Trouble's already here, Grandpa," another sneered, scooping up the gas can from the ground and tossing it aside. Fuel splashed across the concrete in a glittering pool. "Can't even hold a can without shaking." Sam bent slowly to retrieve it, every joint screaming in protest. As he lifted, the first biker shoved him with a casual cruelty born of youthful arrogance. Sam hit the ground hard, hips striking concrete, spine jolting pain up to his shoulders. For a moment, he lay still, staring at the sky, not from inability to rise, but from the crushing realization that this was the freedom he'd fought for. The freedom for people to look away when a man needed help. Stars danced at the edges of his vision. The biker laughter rang in his ears. Young men untested by the fires of combat. Mothers guided children into cars. A teenager filmed the scene on his phone without moving to intervene. Sam felt the sting of abandonment more sharply than any physical blow. Then, gathering every ounce of grit left in his battered body, he pushed himself upright. A thin ribbon of blood traced down his temple. He didn't wipe it away. Instead, he climbed back into his truck as though dusting sand from a rifle. Cold, precise, unbowed by pain, the engine growled to life. The bikers parted, disappointed by his refusal to plead for mercy. As Sam pulled away, their mocking laughter followed like vultures circling carrion. Yet beneath his stoic calm burned a fire older than any forest conflagration. Sam's journey continued through town, hand pressed to his bleeding temple, hip throbbing under the seatbelt's weight. He steered toward Hank's auto shop, hoping for a mechanic's eye. But when he arrived, Mike, Hank's son, shook his head at the sight of rust and age. "Sorry, Mr. Whitmore," Mike said, pointing to a No Classics sign tacked behind the counter. "We don't work on pickups this old. Parts too hard to find." Sam nodded. The unspoken message rang clear. "You're too old. Your truck's too old. Neither warrants the effort." Without arguing, he resumed his drive, passing storefronts adorned with neon signs and discarded newspaper pages fluttering gutterward. Memories rose in Sam's mind like specters: the jungle heat of Laos, the thud of helicopter rotors overhead, the acrid sting of gunpowder, and the weight of his wounded team leader slung across his back as he carried him 3 miles to safety. He remembered shouts in English cutting through foreign tongues, the two-way radio's crackle, the sudden hush when the mission succeeded. He remembered every fallen comrade. Now the only sound was his own labored breathing and the faint cough from the engine. He drove to the small park at town center, its wooden bench shaded by an old oak. There he parked, sat, and pressed the handkerchief to his temple until the bleeding slowed. A child approached hesitantly, lemonade stand in hand, but the mother yanked him back with a sharp whisper. Sam watched the small rejection as though it stung worse than shrapnel. He folded his hands in his lap and stared at the pavement, recalling a time when people looked out for each other. Teenagers strode by, whispering and pointing. "You see that guy? Looks like a zombie from an apocalypse flick," one joked. Sam raised a weathered hand and produced a yellowed photograph from his breast pocket. He unfolded it with reverence. The photo showed 8 young men in jungle fatigues, arms linked before a hovering helicopter. Dirt smeared their faces, but each wore an unguarded, triumphant grin. On the far right, a younger Sam Whitmore stood, eyes fierce and unblinking. On the back, faded script read, "Whiskey Team, the ones who came back." Beneath it lay another relic, a small card, edges frayed, bearing the words, "Emergency Contact, Special Forces Group 72. He hadn't touched it in 40 years. Pride, or the haunting belief that a man handles his own wounds. But today, something broke within him. Not his body, that had survived worse, but his faith in his fellow citizens. With hands that trembled from both age and indignation, he pulled out his old flip phone. He punched in the number printed on the card, expecting only dead lines. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. His heart pounded harder than any firefight echo. Then a voice, crisp, professional, neutral, answered on, "The other end, verification code?" Sam's breath caught. He closed his eyes, recalling protocols drilled into him in long-ago barracks and jungle outposts. He positioned his mind as a soldier, his tone steady. Whiskey 72 Delta, Samuel Whitmore. Silence. Then 2 words that carried an entire lifetime. "Stand by." Sam's gaze lifted to the canopy of the oak tree overhead. Leaves fluttered in a breeze that suddenly carried the scent of promise. He did not yet know what would follow, but he knew that, in less than an hour, his world would shift on its axis. The mocking laughter of bullies would be met by a reckoning earned in blood and brotherhood, and somewhere beyond the horizon of that peaceful park, engines revved, and destiny was rolling in. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows across the park's manicured lawn. Sam Whitmore sat motionless on the wooden bench, the bark's rough grain pressing into his back like the steady reminder of years spent in fatigues. The oak overhead seemed to exhale a soft rustle, leaves whispering in a languid summer breeze. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Somewhere beyond the distant hum of traffic, engines roared, an echo of the very thunder that once carried him into foreign battlefields. A black SUV appeared at the park's gravel entrance, its engine notes subdued yet unmistakable. Then another, and another, 5 in total, rolling in with military precision. Civilian drivers slowed, rubbernecking past the park's wrought iron fence as though witnessing a surreal parade. The bikers, still revving their engines near the playground, paused mid-stunt. Curiosity, confusion, and finally trepidation painted their faces. In near silence, the SUVs formed a perfect perimeter around the central green. Tires settled into the gravel with a muted crunch. Doors opened in unison, and men in simple black t-shirts bearing the Special Forces insignia emerged. Their hair was gray and faces lined, but their movements held the same taut, disciplined efficiency of soldiers, half a century younger. Each man carried himself with the quiet confidence of those who have stared into death and refused to blink. A hush fell. Even children halted their play, captivated by the sudden stillness. The whispered laughter of the bikers died on their lips, as they sensed the transformation unfolding in their midst. Sergeant Major Samuel Whitmore rose from the bench, joints creaking in protest, but spine as straight as he had held it centuries ago under fire. Colonel James Harrington stepped forward, face solemn, and knelt before Sam, once his subordinate, now his honored comrade. "Sergeant Major Whitmore," Harrington intoned, voice carrying across the silent park. "Whiskey team reporting, as ordered." One by one, the remaining members of Whiskey team fell to one knee: Master Sergeant David Reeves, Captain Michael Jenkins, Dr. Thomas Wilson, and 2 others whose faces bore the proud scars of past campaigns. The bikers, stripped of their bravado, stepped back, helmets removed and held at their sides, eyes wide. From the circle formed by the veterans, Dr. Wilson crossed to Sam's side and laid a steadying hand on his shoulder. "They did this to you, Sam?" The question, soft-spoken, carried an unspoken promise. Their wounds would be avenged. Sam met Wilson's gaze, ancient resolve flashing in his clear blue eyes. "I don't want blood," he rasped. "I want them to know what it means to stand by each other." At that moment, Colonel Harrington rose and turned to the gathering crowd. "These men," he declared, voice resonant, laid hands on a Medal of Honor recipient. They mocked him, pushed him to the ground, and walked away, without a second thought. He paused as smartphones lifted, recording. "Such cruelty is an affront to every American who has ever worn the uniform." The bikers exchanged glances, shame seeping into their postures. Then the leader, the one whose shove had set this day in motion, stepped forward, voice trembling. "Sir, I'm sorry. If my grandfather had seen me," he swallowed, "I wouldn't be standing here." Sam studied him, measuring the man's remorse. Around them, passers-by gathered, their expressions shifting from shock to empathy to quiet admiration. Michael Jenkins approached the biker and offered a dog tag. "This was Sam's," he said. "We risked everything to save each other. We never left a man behind." He held the Medal of Honor aloft, sunlight glinting off its star-shaped ribbon. "He did not fight for fame, but out of love for his brothers." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some crouched to whisper to children. Others removed hats and placed hands over hearts. Even the gas station attendant stepped forward, pressing his palms together in apology and respect. The biker leader whispered, "Please, how can I make this right?" Sam inhaled the summer air and exhaled slowly. "Honor is earned through actions," he said softly. "Start by standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves." He paused, then added, "And by learning what service truly means." That evening, word of the park confrontation and the silent arrival of Whiskey Team swept through town like wildfire. Local news vans surrounded the tiny community church, their antennas quivering as cameras captured live feeds. Inside, the pews were already filled by 6 o'clock, but it soon became clear that every seat, aisle, and doorway would overflow. The mayor, a kindly woman with gentle gray curls, took the lectern. Her voice quavered as she spoke. "Tonight, we gather to honor a man we have known for decades, yet never truly understood. Samuel Whitmore has lived among us, quietly serving, silently enduring, while we looked away. Tonight, we will correct that." Sam sat in the front pew, flanked by his whiskey team. Each man's eyes glistened with emotion. Tears tasted of hardship, relief, and unbreakable bonds. The crowd fell silent as the mayor gestured to an aide who rolled forward a covered display beneath a spotlight. When the cloth dropped, a gleaming new plaque caught the light. Sergeant Major Samuel Whitmore Medal of Honor recipient whiskey. Team Special Forces Group 72 No Man Left Behind, dedicated May 24, 2025. Applause thundered through the church. Sam bowed his head. He did not seek this recognition, yet he felt a profound gratitude for the moment when a town remembered to look up. When the clamor subsided, the mayor stepped aside and motioned to Sam. He approached the podium, each step echoing in the vaulted space. Clearing his throat, he spoke in a voice brittle from disuse but resolute with truth. "I did not call my team today to bask in glory. I called because I needed to remember that there was a time when people stood by each other, when no one was left behind. We fought in faraway jungles for freedom, yes, but we also fought so that we could look around and see our neighbors with compassion. If we lose that, we lose everything." He paused, scanning the faces before him. Mechanics who had volunteered to fix his truck, the boy who had dared to offer lemonade, even the bikers who now stood at the back, heads bowed. "I ask only this," Sam continued, voice growing stronger. "When you see a struggling veteran, or an elderly neighbor, or anyone invisible to you, reach out, stand beside them, because compassion is the greatest medal any of us can earn." Tears glistened in Sam's eyes as the church erupted in standing ovation. He stepped down, and his whiskey team embraced him in a circle of weathered arms. In that frame, he was neither old nor wounded, but a soldier at ease among brothers. Outside the church, the bikers approached the group, tentative but determined. The leader removed his leather vest and offered it to Sam. "If you'll have me, I'd like to ride with you sometime. To learn what it means to serve." Sam placed a gnarled hand atop the young man's and nodded. In that gesture lay forgiveness and the promise of renewal. The next morning dawned clear and bright. In the park where Sam had once lain helpless, a small dignitary-laden ceremony took place. The freshly unveiled granite monument, etched with the words, "Honor never fades, respect those who served," stood before a semicircle of flags fluttering in the gentle breeze. Sam, supported by walking cane and comrades, placed a wreath of wildflowers at its base. The bikers formed a guard of honor, engines rumbling in tribute rather than menace. As the bugler's lone note, a haunting rendition of taps, drifted across the green, spectators removed hats and bowed heads. Sam closed his eyes, every memory of pain, loss, and abandonment interwoven with this moment of collective respect. When the echo faded, Sam spoke one final time. "Some wear medals on their chests, others carry scars in their hearts. Both deserve our respect equally." He tapped his chest lightly, where the new Medal of Honor lay against his heart. May we never forget that bravery is born in the quiet moments, in standing up, in stepping in refusing to look away. The crowd dispersed slowly, each person touched by the reminder that heroes live among them, silent, unseen, steadfast. In the days that followed, local businesses offered free oil changes to veterans, mechanics lined up to restore Sam's Ford F-100, and the Bikers Club launched an escort program for funerals and parades, proudly adorning their jackets with the town's new insignia. As for Sam, he returned to his restored pickup, now gleaming cobalt blue, and affixed the simple bumper sticker that had eluded him for years. Proud veteran. With his whiskey team riding shotgun in spirit, he drove through town once more, no longer unseen, no longer invisible, but finally recognized for the courage carried in his quiet dignity. Sometimes, he mused, you have to fall down to be seen. But in truth, Sergeant Major Samuel Whitmore had never fallen. He had stood at attention for 50 years, waiting only for the world to remember to look up.